Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Pencil versus Pixel. I'm your host, Caesar, and I'm very excited to introduce today's guest, Michael Tavani. Michael, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Enjoyed it. I like a good Skype show, so this is good.
You're also very familiar with shows. You have your own show, which I'll get into in a little bit.
Yeah.
So Michael is co-founder and head of product at Scoutmob. It's a mobile company widely praised by the likes of Wired, Forbes, and many others. He's also the host of On Doers. It's a video series where he interviews founders of a lot of startups and companies. Very, very inspiring stuff. We're going to dig a little bit deeper into all of that, but before we continue, Michael, pencil or pixel?
That's a tough question. So I'm a big Moleskine guy. So I like to write down in the Moleskine. I don't use a pencil, but I do use the tactile, a pen.
Oh, nice.
So I really like writing things on a Moleskine with grids. But I really like moving pixels around as well. So I'm going to say it's a square tie.
Oh, nice. So Michael,
Yeah.
I've given a little bit about your background, but let's go ahead and get to know you better. Go ahead and give us an overview of what you do.
Yeah, I mean, just the kind of the high level summary. So I'm one of the two co-founders of Scoutmob, and we originally started off in 2010. And a lot of people who kind of don't dive in too much to Scoutmob would say we're in the deals space. But ultimately, we're a local mobile app. And so we're in 13 cities across the U.S. We started in Atlanta. We're in most of kind of the big NFL cities, Chicago, New York, L.A., San Francisco, D.C., and our app was meant for locals to spontaneously kind of go about the city. And on their phone were a bunch of discounts, incentives to go try places. The whole idea was all local, independent restaurants and retail stores. Unlike, a lot of people are familiar with kind of Groupon and all of that. Our deals were never pay up front. So the consumer never had to pay a penny to Scoutmob. You had these deals on your phone, and ultimately phones have these GPS built into them. So the idea was you would go to a restaurant, you don't pay us anything, and you eat a meal. You order a normal meal, and you eat the meal. At the end of the meal, when you're paying, you say, hey, I have Scoutmob, and you get geo-located at the business. And when you do that, you get a discount. All of our discounts are 50% off. And you show that to the kind of the server, and they take the discount and give you your bill minus the 50% off discount. So we grew real viral from the very beginning. We never spent any money on advertising. We grew totally from word of mouth, and it was because it was a delightful experience. It's funny when I see apps that have come out recently that delight me, like Hotel Tonight or like Uber. They're really doing kind of this delightful thing around kind of a mobile device and GPS and something offline. And that's exactly what we do. It's all obviously different verticals. Ours is around restaurants, but it's the exact same thing. And so when we came out with an app in 2010, January of 2010, we were the first deals company that had an app. We were doing something really kind of different and delightful, and that's kind of fueled our growth. So that's what I'm doing now. I've been doing that for the last almost 4 years now in January. And before that, we had started another company that didn't work. So I've seen me and the same co-founder. So I've seen what it's like to start something that doesn't work, and now to start something that's kind of taken off.
That's a perfect segue to my next question. You said it didn't work. Your last the last startup that you had. What was it that didn't work about it? What did you learn from that?
Well, I think the main thing that we learned a lot of individual lessons along the way, a lot of tactical lessons, but probably the main thing was we learned when we saw the early growth of Scoutmob, we knew that those were numbers that we hadn't seen in the previous thing. So we were pretty quickly able to identify we have something with this new business we didn't with the old business. So it was really clear to call a success, and we knew that pretty obviously. So, it's funny. There's so many lessons you learn along the way. I mean, we learned a lot of tough things along the way. Probably the first tactical lesson we learned with that past business that didn't work was that even though a product might be free to consumers, it doesn't mean they're going to use it. We put this thing out there and it was free, and we figured, why wouldn't you? And it was one of those things, and there's a lot of reasons why you wouldn't do this. And so we learned that you have to really provide value to businesses. And, it was actually the same types of customers that we were working with. But we learned you have to provide real value. And we always work with local businesses. So you have to drive customers into their business to actually walk in the business, or else they're not going to pay you a penny. And even whether you're free or not, they're not even going to care about you unless you can drive customers in. So a lot of tactical lessons and a lot of tough lessons. I mean, it was a tough grind. We were probably doing it for a year and a half. Weren't paying ourselves for probably more than half of that time at all, a penny, and just kind of grinding it out. And we thought it was a decent idea on paper, but it just wasn't taking off. And at a certain point in time, you kind of have to take a hard look in the mirror and say, do we have something here or not? I mean, there is a period of time where it's going to be tough. You have to kind of grind it out. You have to get over that hump. But there is a certain period where you say, we just might not have something. It doesn't matter how hard we work. There just might not be anything here.
What exactly was it that hit you when you knew that your previous business wasn't going to work? What was it? Was there a particular moment, a particular event?
There was a moment specifically that I remember really clearly. We had 2 employees, one in Chicago and one in Denver, because we had launched those cities. And it was a local kind of play. We were doing Wi-Fi at local businesses and charging merchants like a $50 monthly fee to put kind of this Wi-Fi marketing in. And this particular moment was we were running out of money and we had to let go of those 2 employees. And so me and my co-founder, I remember, took like a walk around the block. And I remember exactly where we were and everything. And we said, I mean, we're going to have to let them go. And we have about 3 more months before we have to go get real jobs. And it's funny when your back's against the wall and there was this fear of, oh, man, we're going to have to go get real jobs after doing that for a year and a half. And we were having fun. It was tough, but we were having fun. And so during that 3-month period of time, we got real resourceful. We were able to convince a friend of a friend of a friend to invest a little bit of money in us. And we kind of reformatted our idea and kind of, if you will, pivoted into what became Scoutmob, which was a much different business. Still dealt with local, but totally different business, and that was kind of the beginnings of that business. But it happened during that 3-month period of time where we said, we're going to make this happen during this 3 months. And if we don't, let's go get jobs.
Was it mostly bootstrapped?
Up until that point, it was all bootstrapped, and then that was kind of, an angel round, I guess. It was, 150 grand. I think it was 130 grand was the exact number. And that money kind of bought us about 6 or 9 months of kind of, headway to kick off Scoutmob.
Let's take a step back a little bit. What was it that got you into business in the first place?
So I joke around a lot. You probably heard this if you've seen one of my speeches, but that I was in kind of the entrepreneurial closet for like the first 25 years of my life. And honestly, I think that was the case. Like, when I look back at my youth, when I look back at like high school and college, I did a lot of entrepreneurial things, but I didn't have any role models. This is kind of I'm not going to say it's pre-internet, but it's kind of in the early days of the internet. And, I didn't live in the Valley, so I just wasn't around a lot of entrepreneurs. And if I was around entrepreneurs, they were doing like maybe, they started like their own insurance company. They started non-tech. And so, I'm a tech entrepreneur at the core, but I didn't live in San Francisco, so I wasn't around a ton of tech. And then the entrepreneurs that I was around, that didn't really interest me. And I wasn't even around a lot of entrepreneurs. So I didn't even know it was an option to like start your company. I wish I could talk to myself at 18 years old and give myself some advice, knowing what I know now, and say, get involved. I mean, I would have started a company at 18, a tech company, but I didn't know that was an option. I mean, I didn't have a computer in my dorm room until I was like a senior in college, basically when I was 25, I ended up going to law school. I had a couple of jobs that I thought were dream jobs. I worked for the Atlanta Hawks, which, I'm kind of a sports fan, and that was like the local team, and I thought this is going to be awesome, and I hated it. I was miserable. I didn't like I didn't like my boss. I didn't like what I was doing, and I'm like, I'm working for the Hawks, and I still don't like it, and this should be a fun job. I was doing marketing. And so, and it wasn't until I went to law school, and when I was in law school, I spent a lot of time when I was supposed to be studying. I spent a ton of time reading stories of entrepreneurs. I started blogging myself. I just spent a lot of time online. And during that period of time, I thought to myself, I'm going to start a company for sure when I graduate law school. And I kind of kept that to myself, but that was kind of the moment where I was like, I have to do this.
I'm going to take it back to Scoutmob. How do you know that? Well, first off, the initial business, Skyblocks, right?
Yep.
Didn't work.
Yep.
How did you know that Scoutmob was going to work?
Well, I mean, we didn't know it was going to work. I tell this story a lot too. We launched on January 13th, 2010. The night before we launched, and there was like 3 of us full time, me, another co-founder, and like our first employee. And the night before we launched, we were at our web developer's house, who was a contract web developer. And so there was 2 guys who were kind of building our website and our app. And it's January, it's cold, and we're literally finishing up the website in the app, like the night before it's about to go live. Wow. And we're at this guy's house who's like the developer. And at I think it was 5 in the morning, we like finished. And we were gonna send out the first email at 7 a.m. So 2 hours later, we were gonna like launch the company. And I remember we're walking to the car, it's cold, it's 5 a.m. We're about to get 2 hours of sleep and then wake up and launch the company. And I remember, me saying to my other co-founder, like, is this going to work? Like, is anyone going to care? What's going to happen tomorrow? And we didn't know. So 2 hours before we launched, we didn't know what was going to happen. Probably 3 hours after we launched, we were like, holy shit, like, this is going to be big. But we didn't know that until the day we launched.
So you just decided to take the risk and try it,
yeah,
right?
I mean, well, you have to. Like, until you have a product, I mean, you hear all these stories, you can pitch it to a friend and show them a mock-up and show them a wireframe and do a small case. You can do all of that, but until I guess that's the epitome of like an MVP product. Until you get that thing out there and have people actually like use it and beat it up, everything else is just, well, I would use it. It's funny, like, you've probably heard that line, if you asked, what's the famous line around, like, if you had asked people way back in the day, is it like a Henry Ford line, what they wanted, they'd say they want like a better horse.
Or a faster horse.
A faster horse or something. Consumers, and we're in the consumer business, so I might be speaking just for consumers, but, you couldn't, we had a hard time describing Scoutmob. It was one of these things where you just kind of had to like use it, and we had to like put it in people's hands. And once they did that, we were able to. So it was one of these things where had we put together, and we did this, like I put together like a 1-sheeter and like sent it out to friends, and I was like, would you use this? And they were like, yeah, I'd use it, but would they really use it? Like, would they use it frequently? Would they? And so this was one of those things.
Very cool. So creatives, generally creative, people don't like the word creatives, I found out, but artists, designers.
There's not that many other ways to describe it.
Right. Well, how would you describe it? Okay, let's say artists, designers, musicians, whatever. What would you say? Creatives, right?
I think creatives is as good as anything. Yeah.
That's a big argument right there. I don't know. I'll get into that some other time with other folks that don't that have a problem with it. But what advice would you give designers, creatives, artists to go take the next step to entrepreneurship?
Well, I mean, one thing that I feel like I've learned with Scoutmob, and we value brand and design and the creative juice that you're talking about. We value that. Like, that's what I am at my core. Like, I'm not a trained graphic designer, but I love graphic design, and I feel like I've taught myself, and I'm like a pretty decent graphic designer just from like teaching myself. And I really appreciate design. And so anyway, at the core, that's what I am. But I'll say this, like, I think nowadays, brand and design and all these things that you just said is the most valuable part of a company. That wasn't the case. If you went back 5 years ago, or maybe 2 years ago, it was like, well, technology was key, or you needed a developer, or there was some kind of, there was some other function that you needed. And I just had this conversation today. I think because the barrier to entry to starting a company nowadays is so low, all you need is literally a laptop and an internet connection, and you're halfway to starting a company. And because anyone can start a company, anyone that has a computer and an idea can start a company, because that's the case, what separates those millions of companies that are out there? And in my mind, technology, it used to be technology, but now that's going away. I think, yes, you have to have an app that works. Yes, you have to have a functioning website. But you can hire any college kid or any developer to do that. Now it's the brand, the design, the feel around that. And so I think that's where the creative people come in. And so I would go out on the limb and say over the next 10 years, designers and brand people are going to be some of the most valued people. Like having a good UX designer for like a technology company, or just a good UX person, someone who thinks about product in a really delightful way. That might be the single most important thing for any company over the next 10 years. And so I think a lot of these people probably don't value their worth as much as a lot of these creative people, as much as it actually is. I think that's a part of it. I mean, I know a lot of talented kind of creatives that aren't just great business people, but I know a lot of business people that aren't good designers. I know a lot of financial people that are terrible creative people. I mean, so everyone has kind of usually something that they're good at, and a lot of other things that they're bad at. That's not a problem at all. Just you need to hook up with the people that are good at those other things. So me, for example, I have no interest in I just don't enjoy the operational side of a business. And so I always think about, well, I got to get someone who really is like loves the tactical stuff, loves operations, loves doing. And I like kind of strategy. I like the creative side. I like the brand side. I like the product side. But those are the things I'm going to focus on. Someone else is going to do these others. So, I mean, probably the first thing is for creative is they need to find like a good wingman. And that good wingman needs to have skills that are kind of different than theirs. And so that I'd say that's the first thing. The second thing is this is just general, entrepreneurial advice. You don't know. You said, wow, but you took some risk. Yeah, I mean, it's risky. Every step of the way is risky. There's no part of starting a company that's not risky. I mean, every part's risky. And so, if that's not something that someone wants to stomach, then this is the wrong kind of business,
I think you wrapped everything up. You nailed it, man. So, Michael, do you want my mic or Michael?
Michael.
Michael. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure, man. I don't want to throw Mike. I tend to say Mike a lot.
A lot of people will shorten it to Mike, but I've always just done Michael. I guess everyone has their thing. That's
okay.
Michael, yeah.
Cool, man. So let's talk about On Doers. That's a really cool show. You interview people that are making companies.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically where that came from is two things. One, I love Kevin Rose's Foundation. You watch Foundation?
What's that?
Do you watch Kevin Rose his Foundation shows?
I don't, but I'm going to watch it now.
Check those out. They're really, really good. And I just in general, I think Kevin Rose I like his style of kind of just everything about kind of how he launches companies and all that. So Anyway, he has a show called Foundation, and then there's another show that I watch called This Week in Startups, Jason Calacanis. And so it's two different video podcasts that I like. Mostly I like the Kevin Rose one, though, a little bit better, Foundation. He does it's a long format, 30, 45 minutes sometime, sit-down interview, multi-camera, really high style, just interview. And it's casual, and it's just he talks to founders and entrepreneurs. And I think there was one Saturday, and I'm like watching his show, and there's not that many of them. Like you turn on the TV, there's a little bit of founder entrepreneur stuff kind of creeping up online on TV,
right,
but not much. And so you have to go to YouTube or whatever. And I think there wasn't that many shows to watch. Like there's only so many founder entrepreneur shows on YouTube. And so after watching one of these and being like, man, I want more. I know a filmmaker in Atlanta who's done some videos for Scoutmob, extremely talented filmmaker. And I literally shot him an email, and I'm like, I want to do a show just like this, just because I want to watch it myself. Do you have any interest in like doing it with me? I can't do it by myself, obviously. And he's like, let's do it. This is fun. And so for him, it's an opportunity to try some different things on the film side and film in different styles, and then get to meet kind of these people. What's cool about it, and I think probably LA is a very similar scene to this, and I would almost argue that almost any city outside of maybe the Valley in New York in terms of entrepreneurs and startups, they're small, and you know, they're big cities, but they're small in terms of the scene. And so what's cool about this is originally I started off with just Atlanta-based kind of founders, just because I'm here and they're here.
Yeah.
It's really cool to be able to do something that's an idea that you have, and 2 weeks later you're filming it, and a month later you put out the first video, and it has like an impact really quickly. And this is like, it takes us, it's all time. It didn't, you know, we post the videos on Vimeo and we film them using our own time, and it's all time really. And it's cool to be able to make an impact and do something pretty neat that, you know, that kind of people are able to watch and contributes in a really quick fashion like that. And so I always tell people in Atlanta, but I think it applies to anyone almost in any city, you can make an impact really easily. And that's what's cool about, that's what I love, honestly, about being a founder. Like, we're about to launch a big app update in the next like couple of days. And to me, the most exciting part, and the reason why I like being part of a company that's tech, is hitting like the publish button or launching a video or sending an email where you're controlling it. Like, you designed it, you were a part of it, and then you send it out, or you hit publish, or it goes online, and then people are actually going to interact with it, is like the most exciting feeling in the world. And so I love that feeling, and I think probably everyone who's started like a consumer-based tech company has that same feeling, and there's nothing better.
Very cool. Other than the launch of your app update, any other exciting stuff happening in your company or that you're doing?
I'm actually toying around with the idea of, these are all passion side projects, as if I have any time for those, but I you know, I have too many interests. So I want to do too many things, but you know, I'm toying around with the idea of building kind of a consumer-based, I hate the word co-working space, but kind of an incubator, if you will, authentic old building in Atlanta, in kind of a unique neighborhood in Atlanta, and only putting in kind of design and consumer-based companies. And so I've been toying around with that idea. It involves a lot of elements which are outside of my domain, but I've had to kind of learn, from commercial real estate to all these different elements. But it's been pretty fun, kind of working on that idea and kind of pulling people together. And I think what's cool, I give this advice a lot. I think you'll know your company is it's not a guarantee that it's going to be a success, but you'll know you have something when at least one part of the business comes easy. So when I say one part of the business, the day we launched Scoutmob, 1,000 people claimed the first deal. So literally, we had a deal at this restaurant in Atlanta, and 1,000 people had claimed it on the first day. And so we knew, like, wow, that came really easy to us. So obviously we did something right. Now, there was many other things that were difficult, but that one thing came easy. For this idea that I was just talking about, kind of the incubator, everyone that I tell is like, I'm in, how can I contribute? I love it. And I'm not even trying. I'm like halfway telling the story, and they're like, stop there, I love it. And so it's that part's coming easy. And so, you know, you start to realize, well, maybe it's a decent idea. Maybe there is a need for this. And so there's going to be many other hard parts along the way, but that part was easy.
Michael, do you have any books that you recommend to the creative professional community?
It's funny. I actually have, hold on, let me go get one. I'm coming back. Where is it?
He's leaving us.
Here, this is it. So I'm not a huge book reader. I'm a huge reader. I read a ton of, I have way too much stuff to read. Like, you know, Twitter is my newspaper.
Nice.
And then I use Pocket to save tweets. Like, I like to go through all my tweets every day, like usually in the morning and at night. And then I use Pocket to save articles that I don't have time to read. So that's kind of Twitter's my quick headlines. Pocket is my longer format article. So if I go into my Pocket, I could spend 5 days just reading all my Pocket stuff that I've saved. And so that's kind of longer format stuff. And then, you know, obviously RSS and all the other stuff. But I'm a big, you know, online reader, but I like short snippets because it's more relevant. But I think like 2 years ago, I'm going to start reading some more books. So this book right here, I don't know if you can see it, Founders at Work.
Nice.
Someone recommended this book in Atlanta, and it's written by Jessica Livingston, which her husband is this guy, Paul Graham, who started Y Combinator, and I think she's a partner at Y Combinator. But this is the best book I've ever read around startups.
Wow.
It's really, really good. It's basically what it is she interviews, and I love interviews, as you can tell. Like, I love doing them myself, being a part of them. But she interviews a bunch of founders of companies, and it's real candid, and you hear a lot of like the pre-launch nervousness and like they didn't know what they were doing. My takeaway from that book is that no one has any clue what they're doing the day they launch something. And it's almost embarrassing to look at any company the day it was launched, because there's so many, and these are huge companies. I mean, some of the biggest companies in the world, and they're like, I had no clue what I was doing. The day I launched it, we didn't even have like a button that, you couldn't even like check out, but, and then it became a successful company. So that one was a good one. I'd say that's probably my favorite one.
Very cool.
I take that back. I love kind of biographies. So the Steve Jobs book, especially being in this industry, I don't know if you've read that one.
Oh, yeah,
was
definitely.
Really, really good.
Yeah, very good, very insightful, and a lot of things I didn't know about Apple and Steve
Yeah,
after reading that.
yeah. You're exactly right. I had a much different impression of just every part of it. But what I really appreciate about that book and about the Jobs book was I think Steve Jobs was like, they say like the best athletes see the game in slow motion.
Yeah.
Like a LeBron James sees the game in slow motion. I think Steve Jobs was able to always look at industry that was like cluttered and noisy and a lot of things going on, and he was able to like really clearly distill out, this is what consumers want. It's very clear, it's obvious, and I'm confidently know that this is what consumers want, even though it might have been different than conventional kind of wisdom. So that was pretty cool, and I really appreciate like his desire to keep things simple and eliminate clutter and eliminate like buttons that aren't necessary and UX functionality that's not necessary. So he was really good at that stuff.
Very cool. Michael, before we wrap up, what where can we find you?
So Twitter is really, it's funny. Just today I was thinking, should I start a blog just to have some like longer format stuff? And I had a blog for 2 years in 2005, and it's stressful having a blog. Like, you feel like you have readers and you have to keep it up, and writing is not I'm more visual, and so I don't love writing. And so when Twitter came out, I was like, oh man, this is perfect. It's like my short blog. So Twitter is definitely the best place. My handle is just @Tavani, which is my last name, Tavani. So that's pretty much it. On Doers is the interview show, and we'll be doing more of those. And then Scoutmob, is the company.
Very cool. And everyone, you can find this or these links and everything else that we talked about in the show notes on pencilversuspixel.com. That's pencilvspixel.com/Michael Tavani. Man, Michael, you've given a lot of amazing insight, and we all thank you very, very much for taking your time to be on the show.
Yeah, enjoyed it, and I mean, you got to go for it. That's the key. I think that's the key takeaway. If you didn't listen and if no one listened to anything else this whole time, I'd say you have to jump out of the airplane, jump off the cliff, whatever it is, and then figure out how you're going to make it down safely. But that initial jump's the hardest part. But I'll say this: it's like the best ride of your life. So it's a ton of fun being in the game. It's you can't imagine how much fun it is versus being on the sidelines.
Awesome, Michael. Thanks so much.
Cool. Enjoyed it. Take care.
Thanks.
All right. Bye.